Hey everyone, so hopefully you got on okay with the first video. Today we're going to be talking about technique. So it's a really good idea to make sure that you've got a good basic technique when you start learning the guitar, otherwise you get into bad habits, and later on down the line when you're learning something maybe a little bit more tricky, you're going to struggle a little bit with those bad habits and you have to go backwards and fix them, and that's just really time consuming. Also a little bit more scarier than that, you could actually do some damage to your wrist with bad habits. So we're going to be looking at the left and right hand today and looking at some ways that you can get some really good basic technique into your playing. So looking at the right hand, or left hand if you're left-handed, either way it's going to be the picking hand. Well, let's start off by having a look at how you hold the pick. So make sure that you've got a cross with your thumb and forefinger, and then pop the pick in and just have a little bit of the pick poking out at the end of it. Have a firm grip, but not like really firm so that you're tensing your hand, but enough that you won't drop it. And then when you're picking, there's a couple of different ways to pick. You can either do straight down strokes all the time or up strokes, or you could do alternate picking, economy picking, or sweep picking. So there's a lot of different ways that you can pick the note. We're just going to be looking at alternate picking today. And alternate picking is where it's exactly what it says it is. It's basically where you go down and then up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So you're alternating between the direction of the picking. And a way that you can practice that is with, I think it's called the spider technique, where you can move up and down the fretboard using all four fingers. So I move laterally along, and I think that's a really good way to do it, because it challenges you to make sure that you can move with the technique in the both hands. So let's have a quick look at that. Make sure that you've got an even volume all the way through that, so that no notes are poking out or disappearing. So a nice even volume all the way through. The other thing to look at in the right hand is to make sure that when you're leaning and you're anchoring your wrist, you do so with actually more with the edge of the palm of your hand rather than the wrist, and you situate it on the bridge, not so much on the strings that you mute the strings, but literally just sat right on the cusp of it. Don't push down too hard, again, don't tense your hand, and also make sure that as you're moving up the strings with the left hand, that you mimic that with the right hand. Otherwise you end up with your hand curving, and then the pick will curve with it, and you'll end up with some really poor tone at the top. You'll end up with a really thin sound, or possibly just some misfired notes at the top. So the best way to do it is, as you move down through the strings, is to move your hand with it, keeping the pick at a 90-degree angle to the guitar itself. So like this. So with the left hand, there's a couple of things that we need to look at. One is just to make sure that you keep a nice straight line between your forearm and your hand. Don't constrict the wrist like that, otherwise you'll end up doing damage to your tendons, and that can lead to RSI or carpal tunnel syndrome as well. Sometimes you're going to have to bend your hand a little bit just to make some of those tricky shapes and stretches and things, but generally just try and keep it straight. And you can do that by tipping the guitar up a little bit as well, if you find that having it down there is making a crease. So just try and keep it nice and straight, and then you'll have a nice default position. With your thumb down the back of the neck, you want it kind of roughly around this kind of area of the guitar, of the neck. Sometimes you're going to need it over the top, and sometimes you'll need it down the bottom again, just for those tricky stretches and positions, but generally as a default just around here. You want it in the middle of everything, in the middle of your fingers. Think of it kind of like holding a plate. You want to support whatever it is that you're holding with your thumb. If it's off to the side, then you're more likely to drop it. So just support everything that you're doing here. And then when you're pushing the notes down, try not to push down too hard. Try not to put too much pressure on the note itself, otherwise you'll end up messing with the intonation, you'll end up with a note that's too sharp. If you want to practice that, then maybe pop a little clip-on tuner or a foot tuner a clip-on tuner or a foot switch tuner on the floor, and then pop the note on the guitar and just see whether you're actually pushing down too hard. It will go sharp if you're pushing down too hard. If you're backing off too much, you'll end up just with a buzzy note. So just try and keep that intonation in the pure spot. Try not to have your fingers too far off that way. If you're in the 3rd fret, it'll be too far off that way. Otherwise you'll end up with a buzzy note, and too far that way and you'll end up with either the wrong note or with a muted note. So again, around the sweet spot is kind of around there. So just practice that stuff again with a couple of different notes. You can try that spider exercise again just to make sure that you're getting them all right. And then and make sure you keep your fingers to a 90-degree angle to the fretboard, and using the very tips of your fingers. That's really important too. And then the final thing is just legato. So legato is an Italian musical term meaning smooth or smoothly, and it means when you to connect 2 or more notes together smoothly. So there's a few different ways you can do that on the guitar, namely hammer-ons and pull-offs, string bending, and also slides. There's a couple of other ways of doing it, but those are the kind of the main ones. So with string bending and with slides, we'll look at that a little bit later on, but with hammer-ons and pull-offs, this is a really good way that you can exercise your left hand. So a hammer-on is exactly what the term is, which is to hammer the note on. So you play 2 notes. For this exercise, it's going to be open and then 1st fret, and you're just going to do it with 1 stroke of the right hand. So like this. You can see I just hammered the finger straight onto the fretboard using the very tip of the finger. And then pull off is the exact opposite. You're going to pull the finger off of the note onto the open string. So you're going to it's kind of like a flicking downward motion. So like this. And then you can put them both together. So a hammer on and a pull off. And this is the way it looks when you're doing it with 2 fretted notes. So here's a nice little exercise just to make sure that you're getting those hammer-ons and pull-offs right, and you can also use it as an exercise for the alternate picking in the right hand. So the transcriptions for the 2 little exercises, one for each hand, will be on the Facebook page. And let me know if you have any problems through direct messaging or just a comment, and I'll see you on the next video.